Go ahead. Sorry.
Yes. Thank you, Tomiko. Hello,
Thank you.
everybody. How y'all
Thank you.
doing? Y'all ready for a conversation today from actual social workers talking
So,
about issues today related to domestic violence? And I want to welcome everybody to Healing Conversations. We are
healing.
going to have a conversation about healing, about love,
Healing.
about
Yes.
dealing with your trauma. Ain't that right, Tomiko? We're going
All
to have
of it.
all of this,
All of it.
all of it we are talking about. And we are using illustrations from Cassie and Diddy, their tumultuous relationship, to
Oh, yes.
highlight the cycles of abuse. We're going
Cycles.
to be talking about why do people stay in abusive relationships.
Yes.
It is
Why?
more complex than a person might think it would
Yes.
be,
Yes.
because when you take out, right, Tomiko, when you take out time in your life to set
Yes.
aside several years to study
Yes.
dynamics of human behavior, you do
Yes.
get into
Yes.
cycles of violence. So we're going to talk
Yes.
about that. We're going to get into the psychology of why and how people
How?
stay in abusive relationships
Yes.
using the illustrations from the Cassie and Diddy very, very tense and
Yes.
abusive relationship between the two.
Relationship.
I've been hearing from a lot of people looking
Mhm.
on social media, haven't said much publicly, but
Okay.
today I will. I will explain exactly. So hopefully, people who are watching this show, we can
Yes.
put it all to rest. You will leave here today having
Today.
full understanding.
Understanding.
Yes,
Yay.
about why and how. So there's going to be no victim blaming today. And
Right.
we're going to get right into it. And I want to welcome my guest, Tomiko Moore.
Thank you so much.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Alicia. It is a pleasure to be here and to share space with you. And of course, another social worker. I love it. I love it.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and she's a social worker. I was a social worker in Chicago, and
Okay.
Tomiko Moore is a social worker out of Brooklyn. So let me
Yeah.
tell you something. Social workers run hard in Chicago. We run
Hard.
hard in Brooklyn. They need
Yes.
us in both of those places.
Okay. We step hard. So I'm saying.
Woo! There's a lot of social work activity in those two places. So we're
Yes.
going to bring, not only are we going to bring our classroom knowledge today,
Right.
but we are also going to bring a wealth of information about our own experience as
Yes.
professionals in this field.
Yes.
So let's get right into it. But before I do, there's three things I want to say to everybody. I want to invite everybody, when you want to become participate
Yes.
into healing conversations.
Healing.
We're not victim blaming on this page. We're not pointing the
Right.
finger at who's the problem. We're not
Right.
ranting online about the problem with Black people. We
Right.
are having healing conversations. If you are
Yes.
interested in this, be
Yeah.
sure to text LOVE to
Love.
87948 so that
Love.
you can become part of solutions.
Yes.
And that's what we're doing today. And also, be sure to follow me. Where is it? Let me bring it up. So, in case
Yeah.
people want to see it, text the word love, LOVE,
Love.
right there to
Mhm.
87948. And follow me on Instagram and TikTok.
That's
I'm
it.
on there posting information.
That's
And
it.
you can follow me there at Coaching with Dr. Alicia. And by the way, for any of you guys who want to deal with your trauma, individual past painful memories that are coming up for you, and you need someone to talk to, be sure to contact me at my website, coachingwithdralicia.com. I work with
Yes.
couples and individuals,
Mhm.
and it is something that I just love to do.
Yes.
So make sure that you do that. Okay. All right, everybody.
Yeah.
Now, y'all, okay,
Okay.
we're going to talk about why did Cassie stay in this relationship, this abusive relationship, for 10 years. She stayed in this relationship with Sean Combs for 10 years. Hey, everybody in the chat, how you doing? How about you? I'm just curious about what y'all think. Anybody who's in
Yeah.
the chat, I see y'all joining me today. I see everybody coming on in here. I want to see, hey, Juanita, how you doing? From Milwaukee? What?
Uh-oh.
Okay, be first. That's what's up. Let me know. Why do y'all think she stayed? I would like to know. I want to see from the comments to see if anybody would like to type in the chat. Why do you think a woman, and I don't want to say abuse can happen either way, but
Right.
typically when it's this level of physical violence, it's
Mhm.
typically directed with a woman being victims. And
Yes.
clearly, Cassie
Yeah.
was a victim of domestic violence for
Yes.
several years. Hello, Alicia S. How you doing? Hi, Deanna. How you doing? Is it Alicia or Alicia? I don't know. Low
Okay.
self-esteem. Yes, that's part of it. Fear, retaliation. Thank you, Queen Neff.
Mhm.
Queen Neff, that's what's up. We're gonna dig into that and dissect all of those things. Fame, fortune, and admiration. Interesting, Deanna. That's
Okay.
a very interesting statement there, would you say? So
Mhm.
money made her stay. That's interesting. Okay, so
Yes, could be.
that's very
Could
interesting.
be.
Low self-value, fear, and isolation. Believing is love and it is not. Thank you, Juanita. Yes, believing that it is love and it is not love. And a party never ended. Cheryl, talking about
Okay.
party never
Okay.
ends. Okay, I will weigh in on this,
Okay.
Cheryl.
Audio
I got
on
some
time.
words to weigh in on it. So let's take it over to my guest here. I have all the thoughts about why a woman stays in a relationship so long.
Yeah.
But how about you tell
Yes.
me? Let's go through
Mhm.
one of the reasons. What are one of the reasons why a woman, such as Cassie, would stay in a relationship like this for 10 years?
All right. So, such as Cassie, we're going to say, right, and could be other women as well. But
Yes.
one of the reasons could be lifestyle. It could be lifestyle of how she wanted, or lifestyle of what presently is. And sometimes when people are in a great lifestyle as what they wanted, what they desired, then they stay. And sometimes someone can ignore the abuse because I want to continue the lifestyle. And so that is one reason. And all the comments were great: fear, money, and all of that. But sometimes when we have a desire and we cannot create it on our own, and someone can do it for us, it's like, let me jump in. Let me jump in and let me get it before I lose the chance. Right. And so once you
Mhm.
in that chance, right, and you wooed in, like, I done fantasize you, I done romance you, and I gave you this lifestyle that you dreamt of and you couldn't create. I'm gonna kind of ignore certain red flags that we call in social work, some certain
Mhm.
red flags to keep my lifestyle. And so that's one of the reasons. Come on, take it, Dr. Alicia. That
Yeah,
is
I mean,
one of the
what
reasons.
let me just say what you're saying makes perfect sense. Now, how
Mhm,
I would frame it is that
mhm.
the reason why a lot of women stay in these situations is because they are financially dependent on
Yes.
the man. When I worked with women, I worked in hospital settings. Actually, I worked at
Mhm.
Cook County Hospital in
Okay. Okay.
Chicago. And a lot of women would come in there and they would be beaten up so badly. And I would
Yes.
talk to them about the cycle of abuse, which we will talk
Right.
about. And
Right.
I would, explore with them all of the different options. I would get them set up with counseling and all of those things. And they were very afraid, number
Yes.
one, that if they left their partner,
Mhm.
that they would have nowhere else to go
Right.
because it's about control, because
Yes.
they felt that their partner controlled all of the finances. And
Yes.
particularly I would see this, and it's
Mhm.
not the case in Cassie's situation, but
Mhm.
sometimes women have children with these men, multiple
Yes.
children,
Yes.
and they depended on them, and they felt that if they broke the relationship, that they would basically be homeless on the street. And there have
Right.
been many times where I've had to place women who were afraid of their life into a shelter. And if
Yes.
you can imagine, some of these women come from middle class families, come
Yes.
from upper class families. They'd have to
Yes.
leave
Mhm.
all this financial security aside. So it
Right.
becomes a very difficult decision for a lot of women, and they feel stuck in the
Yes.
situation. And they feel
Mhm.
like they're stuck because they feel like they can't make it on their own. And I have
Right.
spoken to women who are in very, very toxic situations, and they're just overwhelmed by
Right.
the thought of leaving. They're like, I don't know what to do
Right.
because this man is paying all the bills.
That's it.
And I'm afraid that
Mhm.
if I leave, now Cassie had a lot of fear,
Right.
okay? But part of the fear was that when you depend on somebody financially, it is so difficult to just pick up your stuff and leave because you psychologically don't believe that you have
Right.
any other way of dealing with it. So, yes, I really do think that finances is one of the main reasons why a lot of women stay longer than they need to stay. Okay,
Yes.
so let's just talk about the fact that it is so brave for women to actually leave.
Right. It is. It
Do
is.
you want to comment
It,
on some of the reasons why women stay? Yes.
of course. So again, Dr. Alicia, she done said it. Some stay out of fear, but
Yes.
some stay also out of embarrassment. They don't want to tell they don't want to tell their family. I've also too worked with clients in healthcare, and
Yes.
some don't want to stay, and even some suggestions that I will say, they say no, I don't want to tell my family. Yes, I do have family back home, but I don't want to go back home and I don't want to tell my family. So I would rather, I would stay. And then sometimes, it is a mindset, right? So once that power and control that Dr. Alicia was talking about have already embedded in your mind, it's
Yes.
like, I don't even know where to go. I don't know where to go. And one thing that I do want to mention, sometimes when someone, mostly women, try to leave in front of that abusive spouse, then it can heighten, especially a death can possibly happen to the woman. So that is not the right time to leave in front of that spouse. It is not the right time to leave. And so they fear. And so it's like, okay, well, allow me to stay, but also finances, that I don't have enough money to make it on my own. And so again, I'm just going to take it and stay. And so that's why, as social workers, and we don't put down and say, well, why don't you just leave? It's not that easy. It's
You
not that
actually you
easy.
shouldn't even recommend it.
Right, right. Just to say, okay, well, get up and just leave, because it's not that easy just to leave like that after I have embedded so much time, after I have put my investment in so much time, and here you asking me to leave for the unknown. I can't do that sometimes, but eventually, sometimes
Yes.
it does happen. But we don't want to, put someone down, because I hear it when saying it's not that easy just to leave. It's
Yeah.
not that easy just to leave.
No, I absolutely agree with that. I mean, it's critical that we acknowledge that the most dangerous time
Yes,
in a woman's life
yes,
for a survivor of an abusive relationship is
yes.
when she decides to leave.
Thank you.
It escalates the abuser's behavior and it
Yes,
puts her in immediate danger. And she talks about this a lot. When she was
yes.
on that stand, how brave is it for her to get on that stand,
Mm-hmm.
8 months pregnant, and talk about these things? She said, I was absolutely frightened because she
Right,
was trapped by him. She said he would come up to her apartment. Actually, he
right.
paid for her apartment. So there's a
Mhm.
financial thing,
You
right? He would
see?
come up there, and every time she would have to plan and and connive and pretend. She would have to play and pretend certain things because she was so trapped by fear, because he was going to retaliate.
Right.
He told her, he said, if you leave me, I will release those tapes and embarrass you in front of everybody.
Right.
I will release those sex tapes.
That's the
So
coercion.
she was trapped.
Yes.
She had the loss of financial stability, her housing. He's a powerful person. The psychological impact of that fear is paralyzing.
Right.
And it's, you know, her safety
Right.
was in danger. It actually was in danger. I mean, she knew that Kid Cudi's car was blown up.
Yeah.
You know, he doesn't care about anybody. I mean, we talk about psychopaths. I would not, if I was working with her, I would not advise her to leave immediately. I would say, listen, we have to plan for you to leave.
Right.
So you go through a safety plan.
Right.
But it is not recommended that you leave. And he was scaring her. And by the way, just to let everybody know, on average, a woman leaves a violent relationship after 7 reported incidents. It is so critical that we emphasize this, because I do not like hearing some of these comments from people all online about she should just get up and go. Well, you know what?
It's not that easy.
It is not that easy. And we're talking about 7 times a woman reports the incident. This is not isolated events and situations, just when it's severe enough for it to be disclosed and documented. So that tells us about the immense resilience and complexity that it takes to make these decisions, because fear, emotional attachment, financial independence, societal pressures, all of this can influences how somebody seeks help.
Right.
Okay. So we talked. Hey, how's everybody doing?
This is good stuff, Dr. Alicia. This is good
By
stuff.
the way, I just want to say, if you go to the show notes, they have information there. If anybody is going through a very difficult situation, if you yourself, if you know somebody, hit the like button and share this video so that people can understand why and how people are in this type of relationships. Many of us are in it. By the way, there's no socioeconomic status. You could be the wealthy of the wealthy and the poorest of the poor. Domestic violence permeates all economic levels. That's one thing I was surprised by, just as a practicing social worker. So, so I just wanted to say that, and just let everybody know, if this is triggering for you or any of that, go to the notes in the show, and it has the number to the domestic violence hotline, so you guys can have that, you know, at your fingertips, and you can hit the like button and share this with somebody who may be going through something like this. Now, I know people have been talking about the fact that Cassie and Puff Daddy are trauma bonded, and some of this happens because of the cycle of abuse. And I know you have this book. Y'all don't know Miss Tomiko Moore. She's got a book called The Anti-Woman, and it's all, she wrote it 3 years ago, and it's all about societies. Look at women, and it's all about women. And I want to talk a little bit about the cycle of abuse. What can you tell? How can you set the stage so that people can understand more about the psychological reasons why women stay in abusive relationships?
Okay. Well, that's the key word, cycle. Cycle. It goes around, it goes around, it goes around. So the cycle of abuse. First, sometimes it can really start very, very light, you know, yelling, pushing, keeping yourself away from your family and friends. And then you like, oh no, he just loved me. He just want me to himself. Sometimes you got to weigh how much, because it's that isolation. It's that isolation. How much are you isolated? One thing about a cycle of abuse is that I need to get you away from your support system. Okay. Because if you feel that you have no help and that person is the only way to help you, it is easy to manipulate you, and it is easy to intensify that abuse. That is how the start of it sometimes. So that cycle of abuse, okay, it had, some say it happened. He said that he will never do it again. He brought me flowers, we went out, we had a good night, that night. And so that's the honeymoon stage. It calls the honeymoon. That's the honeymoon stage. That's the honeymoon stage. But then lo and behold, again, it'll escalate right back up. Right.
Yes.
So I don't know
Yes.
anyone who's been in a domestic violence relationship and report that it only happened one time. I just don't know. It will come, it will continue. And there's certain factors to play. I don't know. Does he use substances? Does he have an anger issue? But what I do want to say that domestic violence, it is not about anger. That person can be angry, but it is about power and it is about control. I break your power and I use my control over you so you can do what I say to do. And if you don't, it's going to be a problem. That's how the fear starts. That's how the fear starts. So that's the cycle. It will start slow. Sometimes it'll start hot, but it will start slow. And you will say, well, because sometimes we see the signs, but we so don't want to be by ourselves because it's not so easy to be lonely. We're feeling that loneliness. And so I'd rather just be in something to be together, than versus lonely and safe. And so I remain in this cycle of abuse because I'm tired of being alone. I'm tired of being alone.
Oh my God. And it's so funny because that honeymoon stage feels so good.
Good,
I
girl.
mean, so much happens in that honeymoon stage. It's almost like they beg you. They say, please don't leave me. I don't know what I would do without you.
Okay.
And I'm gonna things will be good again.
Good.
They shower you with gifts.
Right.
They apologize. They give you all those words of affirmations.
Yes.
They do anything for you. And they just talk about how terrible. They'll even promise to go to therapy, but don't actually go.
Don't go.
They don't
go.
They ain't gonna go. And
No.
it feels good because of the loneliness. I love that you brought up that loneliness because it actually feels good.
Right.
That honeymoon stage feels beautiful.
And
you have amnesia.
And you stay. Right.
And you stay. And actually for a long time, things become calm again.
Right.
And you're thinking to yourself, he's not going to do it again.
Right.
They're not going to do it again. This phase, it's an illusion of things being stable. There's no immediate abusive behaviors happening there. Everything comes back to normal until the tension builds again.
The tension builds, and then it builds right back up. And sometimes they lie. They say, oh, if you don't come back, I'm going to kill myself and all of that. I've seen somebody send a picture with a knife in his arm. And I'm like, if you want to kill yourself, do you really have time to take a picture with a knife on your arm and then send it? Stop the madness. Stop it. But then they will. That's that manipulation stage. And you say, oh, okay, well, he can't live without me. Say he's going to kill himself. So I better just come back. No. If you can get away and don't return. Sometimes, the death, sometimes the cycle happens when you want to return, when you come back. But anyone that I've heard that gotten away one time and never returned, that's it. Once you get free, stay. But sometimes you come back because you listen and you give that person your time. And once you start giving that person your time, then it's time again to speak in your ear. And so now you have time to think about what he said, and then you return.
Oh my goodness. That's exactly the cycle of abuse. That tension where you're walking on eggshells and you know that it's coming. And then that explosion phase. I've never seen, I watched part of and got accounts of her on that witness stand, just really, really talking about how frightening, she was and how afraid she was of him and how he used fear and manipulation, and basically said, if you leave me, I will release those tapes.
Yes.
And I
Yes.
mean, just that thought. I mean, the
That's
scene,
the
we
threat.
did see the scene when
Mhm.
she actually did try to run.
Right.
She
Right.
tried to run, and
Yeah.
he ran after her and dragged her back in,
You see?
and would pop up and show up. I mean,
Right.
what a frightening thing. And I do want to talk a little bit about trauma bond. But
Yeah.
before I go into that, I see my husband has joined us. Are you
All
going to come
right.
in today?
All right, Dr. Watkins, come on in. Come on in.
Boys,
Come
come
on in.
on,
Come
boys.
on in. Come on in.
What?
Got the husband here. All right.
What?
Let me stop. Let me stop. Let me stop. Let me act.
How
Come
you
on in.
doing?
How you
Welcome.
doing? Welcome.
Wait, we can't hear you.
Yes. Come on. We need a man perspective. We got a man perspective going on here.
Oh, I don't know why his sound isn't working.
Oh, we need your sound, Dr. Watkins. We need your sound.
We do need his sound. I do want to talk about, so just in case everybody knows, it's the cycle of abuse.
Mm-hmm.
While Boyce comes back into the stage, there's four phases in the cycle of abuse. Number one is the tension build-up phase.
Yes.
Where you're walking on eggshells. You start
Yes.
noticing that your partner is a little irritable, controlling, distant, distracted.
Yes.
So that's the first stage. The second stage is the explosion stage. So eventually there's this tension, and then boom, explosion. Abusive behavior, harmful. It could be emotional manipulation, outburst.
Right.
The victim is hurt, scared, vulnerable, all of that. The third stage is, right, Tomiko?
Yeah.
The honeymoon stage.
That's it.
Promises that they'll never ever do it again.
That's it.
Empty promises, showering you with gifts, making promises that they are going to go to therapy, which they ain't never gonna do.
Right.
And then it is possible for change to happen, by the way. I just want to just let you know.
We're going to give some hope.
Just give some hope. It is possible that that change will happen. But finally at the end, and then the stage number 4 is, and it's a cycle, so it repeats itself. Right. It's where things appear stable again. There's no abusive behavior, and everything is down. Everything is calm, and everything is until it builds up again. So I want to just say, hopefully my husband will come back on, but I want to just say, all relationships, even healthy ones, go through cycles.
Right. Right.
So, y'all know.
Right.
Speak on that, Tomiko.
Okay, we're going to speak on cycles. All right. All right. So, like Dr. Alicia said, even healthy ones go through cycles. And it can just be cycles of disagreements. All right.
Yes.
Cycles of disagreements, then cycles of abuse is way totally different. Totally different. Okay. So cycles of disagreement, I haven't seen any relationship where they agree all the time, but it's good, for healthy arguments, because sometimes you grow to get to know the other person. And just because you marry them doesn't mean that you know everything about them. Okay. So you reside together so y'all can continue to grow together and to learn together. And during that learning process, there might be disagreements, and it's okay to disagree. We agree to disagree, but we respect each other. So there are periods of disagreements, and there are periods where you can argue your viewpoint strongly. We argue our viewpoint strongly, but that's way, way different than when it gets physical. You understand, and where it gets abusive. So there are cycles. So there are cycles where he gonna get on your nerves. There are cycles where she gonna get on your nerves. But love conquers all. So although you got on my nerves, that doesn't mean that I throw you away, because there is nobody that's without fault. We are all, with fault. But with your fault, I still love you. That's
Yes.
the difference of
That's
cycle
the difference. And
and
then
a
with healthy
healthy relationship.
relationships,
That's it.
that's so important, because abusive relationships, they go through the cycle, but it's like what you just said, it's
Right.
power and control.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Right. Right.
Welcome, Dr. Watkins. Listen, boys,
Yes.
you got two social workers here, so come on. What you
That's
got to
it,
say?
boys.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
know
well,
the truth.
I was listening to the conversation, and can everybody hear me? Everybody can hear me, right?
Yes, we can hear
Uh-huh.
you.
Okay, great, great. Sorry about that earlier.
That's okay.
But I was listening to the conversation, and I really think that this case is such an interesting statement about so many things that go beyond just Diddy and Cassie. It really talks
Right.
about the culture,
Right.
and you have to
Okay.
remember that Diddy, a guy, I'm gonna tell you, I never really liked a lot of what he represented for our people.
Right.
But he was held up by many people, male and female, as an icon, as a
Mhm.
leader. He was
Yes.
standing next to Barack Obama telling everybody who to vote for. He was on the
Yes.
covers of magazines as an example of Black excellence. He
Yes.
was invited to sit with kings and presidents and queens and leaders and
Mhm.
everything else. And so we have to think about this as a community in terms of what we did to create that monster in the first place. Like
Right.
we created that monster. We fed the beast, right?
Mhm.
And then now we're upset about the fact that the beast was eaten behind the scenes. But what I really would say too is that I think it's time to take a second and acknowledge those individuals and collectives who saw the beast all along. Not just so much with Diddy, but the
Right.
fact that Diddy is a product of something bigger than Diddy.
Right.
Diddy ain't just Diddy. Diddy is like he had Oprah Winfrey level power in the sense that he was connected to
Right.
so many people. Every celebrity wanted to be with Diddy. There were commercials, videos we could show right now where
Mhm.
Will Smith and all these Ashton Kutcher and all these celebrities are saying, "Ain't no party like a Diddy party," right? So Diddy isn't just a guy. Diddy is a manifestation of a broader idea that's
Mhm.
bigger than him, and like similar to a Pied Piper. If our children,
Mhm.
millions of our children were attracted to bright shiny.
Mhm.
Millions of our young girls said, "Ooh, I want to be with a man like that. I want to be
Mhm.
next to Diddy and Jay-Z." I knew a young lady I mentored who said that she went to college only for a little while because she knew one day she was going to meet Diddy or Jay-Z and they were going to take her away and she was going to have this amazing career. So I think that rather than us just talking about the specifics of what happened here with Diddy and Cassie,
Mhm.
there's not a doubt in my mind that Diddy did sinister things. I think that we should really talk about the culture and realize we're all guilty of signing off on this. If we were if we were to have tried to have this conversation in
Mhm.
2014
Mhm.
or 2015 instead of 2025, the reaction will be completely different. People will say, "Why are you hating? They have a beautiful relationship. She keeps
Right.
telling you that her man is a good man.
Mhm.
Look at her last album. Look at how beautiful she looks. Look at how happy she looks." We would be made fun of for having this conversation. But now that it's all said and done, suddenly
Right.
everyone's like, what happened here? Why did she do it? Why did he do it? I would say, why did we do it? That's my perspective on that.
Right.
Yeah,
And
yeah, go.
go
I
ahead.
want to jump in here. That's a good angle.
Right.
I want to bring it down to sort of like the social work world here too.
Uh-huh.
We don't know much about Diddy's background, but we do
Right.
know that perpetrators of abuse have a
Mhm.
very disorganized attachment.
Right.
Okay, and attachment disruptions. They
Mhm.
have a very interesting childhood. We
Mhm.
don't know necessarily his childhood, so I can't
Right.
speak on that. But I
Mhm.
know that individuals who walk around like that are in a lot of pain,
Right.
and they haven't dealt with the pain that they're going through. The psychology of perpetrators,
Mhm.
who do this. Also, survivors of domestic violence,
Mhm.
especially domestic violence that went on that long, we know that they typically, I don't know Cassie's background, but I do know that individuals like that also tend to come from relationships
Mhm.
and environments where they themselves, the root of it could be a traumatic experience for them as a child.
Right.
And this is familiar to them. And they
Mhm.
rationalize and justify why they would stay because they don't know what love feels like,
Right.
because they have trauma from their family of origin.
Right.
Because you have to understand that Cassie, like many victims of domestic violence, she talked about how she was diagnosed with PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. And that means she had flashbacks, emotional detachment.
Right.
Happens with people who have PTSD. And she experienced depression, anxiety, panic attack, and she used drugs. Right. Drug and substance use is a symptom of PTSD because you have to numb your body out.
Yes.
So, I mean, I think it's important. I bring it down to the psychology of why people are there. And then, yeah, Boyce is right. We live in a society. First of all, we live in a society where misogynistic behavior, negative attitudes toward Black women are promoted in our music and in our culture. Right. That's part of the issue. I used to be an evaluator for a program that dealt with and worked with men and women who were perpetrators of domestic violence, court ordered. And I used to evaluate their program, and they talked about how culture kind of influences this negative attitude toward women. And not only that, but we live in a society where culture blames the victim.
That is true. And give a pass for the perpetrator.
So you don't want to step forward. You don't want to talk about what's happened to you because you're afraid of how people are going to look at you and say there's something wrong with you.
Right.
Cassie was abused.
Right.
Hold your judgment. Before we start pointing the finger at somebody, I think we need to think how sick Black society is to sit online and blame her.
But let me ask you this, babe. Let me ask you this. Can you give her some degree of power in her own decision making without victim blaming? Right. But listen. Hold on. Like you say that she was a drug addict because of her PTSD and her trauma.
Yes.
Diddy was a drug addict, likely because of his PTSD and his trauma.
Yes.
Right. And we know that Diddy is the stronger person in the relationship. He had the more money, more power. He was also a man. We're physically strong. So I think that we're clear on who was more likely to have been the physical perpetrator in terms of threats and violence and things like that. But I think that the question then becomes, like, how did J-Lo walk away from that relationship without ended up dead? You know, and
I'm not 19 years old.
Right. And so I agree with you. I agree. So are we saying that 19-year-old women should not be allowed to choose who they want to date? Because hold on, because that then goes into a conversation that I've always had about fatherhood. I think that strong fathers should be allowed to have some say in whether or not their daughters are allowed to date these older men. And I think that when you bring home a guy like this and you say, Daddy, shut up, I'm going to do what I want to do, you're also taking responsibility for the consequences of that choice. Not that you're to blame for that. But like when I told my mother, hey, if I was to tell my mother when I was 19, Mama, I want to run the streets. I ain't going to listen to you. And then I go in the streets and I get shot. Of course, I'm a victim. 100%. I didn't shoot myself. But there would be a person who loved me enough to say, well, you should have listened to your mama. Your mama told you to stay out them streets and you went out here and look at what happened to you. So I'm trying to figure out when can we have a war.
We're not going to do that, boys, because the reason why we're not going to do that is because individuals who are more likely, not all the time, who are more likely to get themselves in a trauma bond, and I can go through what trauma bond means. Individuals who are likely to get in there, they have trauma unresolved in their history. And she was 19 years old, and she wanted to plead.
Well, let me ask you then. What is the solution? I mean, because remember, there's another Cassie out there right now who is, if you go to her and say, hey, look, don't do this. This guy's going to hurt you. You're chasing the gangsters and the thugs because that looks glamorous. But as an older man, I'm telling you, this is not appropriate. I'm going to tell you, as an older man, as a 53-year-old man, I get shut down. I tried to say to Lizzo, look, you live in that crazy lifestyle and promoting this nonsense and obesity and all this crazy slut-like behavior, which is beneath you. You're going to end up paying a price for that. I got called the patriarchal sexist, whatever, right? And then next thing you know, Lizzo's getting sued because she's got women shooting bananas out of their vaginas on the stage. And I said, see, I told you this kind of thing happens. So what I'm saying is that I think at some point there has to be a solution. The solution can't just be let's all just keep letting victimizations happen. And then
The solution is to
Okay.
heal.
Okay, please go ahead. I want to
And
hear
I
your
just want
solution.
to point out, one thing. Studies are
Bad,
out
Dr. Sure.
about major age differences between men and women when they date each other. It's not it's not typically abusive. Typically, a lot of times people demonize relationships where there's a large age gap, and they trivialize that relationship and try to say it's not as legitimate as if the age gap was a little closer. But I actually looked it up because I was like, is this true or not? It's not true. It is not accurate that people because when there's large age gaps, that there's manipulation happening. So just because a younger woman is dating an older man doesn't mean automatically that there's going to be some sort of exploitation there. But in this situation with Cassie, you know, she went into the treatment center for sex addiction and drug abuse. So sex addiction, we know, is a symptom of the PTSD. She's talked about how she did not want to have those freak offs, but he introduced all of this to her and she agreed to do it because of the trauma bond, which I can get into. Maybe I can get into it now, but she wanted to please him. She was intrigued by him. She was acting as if she did because she wanted to spend time with him. And that was the only thing she said. I had to give him what he wanted so that I can spend time with him. And what happens with a lot when it comes to substance abuse and sex addiction is that you detach from your body. People who have PTSD have a disassociation that happens to them. I mean, who could do a freak off for she said it lasted for 4 days. How do you get through that kind of thing if you don't have PTSD? Disassociating from your body, you numb out, and that can eventually turn into sex addiction and drug addiction and all of that. It's, you know, you're not presented with reality. So she was abused. And it's interesting how the brain works.
Yeah.
You know, it goes into these defense mechanisms, and you want to please that person out of survival and coping with the situation. But Cassie, she claimed that she thought that she was actually in love with him. Anyway, Tomiko, I'll let you continue. You can talk.
I'm just going to say it briefly because it's a lot going on here. But as far as Diddy, and I've never promoted Diddy, I'm saying, but anyway, I believe that although Diddy have sat with Oprah and President Obama and things like that, I'm thinking they seen some good in him. They seen something, but that violence that was escalated, it was already embedded in him. We did not. I when I say we, I'm talking about the people. Don't believe that we promoted it for him. It was already embedded. And sometimes when things are deep down rooted inside of you, it just needs something to happen, triggers for it to come out. But that was already embedded. And like Dr. Alicia said, that could have been from years. And sometimes instead of dealing with a situation for years, we mask it, we cover it, and then we just keep rolling. And so that's how sometimes, you know, people become good at something. It's like, listen, I mask it. I put that energy into my music because I don't want to deal with what happened in my childhood. So now I'm going to do, I'm going to do it up because my energy got to go somewhere. But then when I meet that person that might have triggered something in my childhood, then I explode. So that violence and things like that was already embedded. I believe it was already embedded inside of Diddy. And so, so Obama, you know, he was with the big boys and things like that because I'm gathering, I guess they seen something positive. And although again, we all, again, without error, we all are not without error. We all have human error. But this one, this domestic violence, no, have to pay the price of your behavior. It have to be a price. There's always something is a cost to your behavior, but it's something that probably occurred in the childhood because we learned behavior. We coming out the womb. We don't know anything unless we're taught. You know what I'm saying? Or we observe something and then we mimic it in the beginning. And that's when I did the video that you may have the wrong person.
Yeah.
Really, I'm not really lashing out on you. It's just that when I was small and I seen, my loved one I couldn't protect that loved one. So
That's
now
right.
I was like, ain't nobody gonna do this for me. No, ain't nobody, I ain't letting nobody get over. So when you come at me, you done trigger my childhood, what happened. So now I gotta bang, bang, bang you. That's what I'm saying. So that was already embedded. That behavior was already embedded. We didn't
and promoted and allowed, and he had a whole system set up to facilitate this toxicity that was happening. Toxic is a light word. I mean, it's demonic, the things he was doing. What are you doing with baby oil laced with horse tranquilizers? Like, come on, like that was just, it's absurd. And like Dr. Boyce said, promoted within the culture.
Yes.
How misogynistic hip hop culture is. It's unbelievable. And it went unchecked. I'm certain there were people who saw this and no one, or maybe even the people who did speak out was afraid.
Right.
Because of what was happening.
Because that's what power do. It's like if I open my mouth, this is what may happen. And so they live on the notion of what may happen, not what is happening. And because I'm thinking what may happen, I fall back and don't say anything.
Yeah, well, I'll say this as the only man on the panel. I'm not here to defend. First of all, I want to say I don't defend Diddy. I defend black men. I don't defend men like Diddy because I don't like. I never liked their behavior. I've talked about men like R. Kelly. I think that they represent the worst of us. Alicia knows. 25 years I've been talking about. And what I think leads to just some men feeling some kind of way about a lot of this is that men don't feel like we get listened to. Good men don't get. We feel like we get ignored, passed up, so that women can go chase these bright, shiny Negroes on TV. And it's fine. I mean, I don't care. People can like who they want to like. But then when they go off with these guys and they get victimized, then they'll say, well, it's because men do this and men do that. And men don't do that.
No,
those men do that.
Right.
And it becomes one of these things where I'm going to just tell you that men have insights into other men that women do not typically have. Women have just like your mama had insights into women that a man may not have. So if a man brings home an inappropriate woman to mama sees right through it, and she's like, I don't want that lady in my house. Get her out of here. And you listen to mama. You listen to mama. You listen to mama. So what I think we have in our community, I looked up again as a girl dad that I am. First thing I looked at when I looked at Cassie and her situation, her choices, I've seen it before. I've seen girls chasing the bright, shiny lights and the money and everything and get caught up in a situation that was too much for them. I really was like, well, where was her daddy at? Where's the father? And her father was not involved in her life. And again, I think that if you really want to, the question is, do you want to just talk about what happened and who the victim was? Or do we want to really figure out what the solution might be, or what the bigger issue, what the bigger problem is, why this is going to repeat itself? It's repeating itself right now.
Yes.
There are young girls chasing after the Lil Waynes, guys like that. Lil Wayne literally had a lyric where he rapped about stealing your girlfriend, turning her into a prostitute, and chopping her dead body up and sending it back to her boyfriend. He literally said that in a lyric, and women just screamed in the stands like, I love you, Lil Wayne, you're so talented. And I was like, and I remember talking to a woman, I said, you do know in that verse, he literally said he would date you for a while, use you up, chop your dead body up, and send you back to your boyfriend, and he's still a man you admire. That's sick. That's insanity. So the sickness. Here's the thing. I think we can agree on this. I'm assuming you're the social workers. I'm not a real doctor. I just play one on TV. But what I'm going to say is, like, I'm going to make the statement that says, I think we know who was right and who was wrong in terms of who really harmed who the most, for sure. But I think we can both agree that both of these people were sick. I really feel like you had two sick people who did sick things. And because remember, the same way Cassie was victimized by Diddy was probably victimized by somebody else.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Remember, Diddy had to learn.
They both probably had some trauma.
Right. He learned the freak off culture from the music industry. You got the Clive Davises and all this other stuff. And I think that his violence definitely. I mean, I think people that followed hip hop knew Diddy was violent back when Tupac got murdered, when Biggie died, and when people were just dying around Diddy all those years.
Right.
And I can tell you, I never went to a Diddy space. Dr. Claude Anderson got invited to meet Diddy in his office. He didn't like it. He just didn't know why, but his energy was just off. And I remember I spoke to someone about Diddy and who knows him well. And I said, what's going on over there with Diddy? You know, in his bad boy space. He said, I don't know what's going on, but it's very dark. There's something really dark happening. He said this to me in about 2016. And this is the person who knows Diddy, right? Who knows that space. So my point is to say that I think that we have to really stop for a minute and ask ourselves, what has hip hop culture really done to our men? What's it doing to our women? Also, what does the fatherlessness culture, the almost like the celebration of broken homes, what does that do in terms of leaving our young ladies without the protection that they need? Because I can guarantee you that if Diddy tried to dance his way into the home of James Evans Jr. on Good Times, you know, and Thelma's talking about, this is my new boyfriend, you know, he would have an obstacle to break through. And really, if you look, and last thing I'm gonna say on this, actually, I heard that there was actually a child predator who was doing an honest interview. He had preyed on lots of young girls and young boys and everything else. And in that interview, they said, well, what was the thing that would make you pick one child over another, or one young lady over another? He said it was always what kind of father she had. He said if she had no father or a weak father, then I was more likely to move than if she had a strong, serious father who could tell that I was up to no good. He said that kind of man I ran away from because I did not want that kind of smoke. He said, but the other people were like little, like just eating an apple off a tree. They were easy pickings. So that's it.
Yeah, I just want to add to, I agree with what you say, but I want to add to it. It's not just any father in the home. It's a father who respects the mother. Because some of these people come from violent homes where they grow up watching their parents throwing stuff at each other and kicking and fighting and beating on everybody, and the toxicity. They grow up in toxic homes. That's priming people for a future of what's familiar to them. They get into the trauma bond because they forget. They think that this is connection, but it's not. It's psychological trauma. That it starts psychological trauma. There's alternating abuse and an intense makeup process we just talked about. That cycle of abuse bonds you psychologically. You deny the reality of the abuse, and the person's telling you that didn't just happen, and you start second guessing yourself. So I just want to just make that, you know, because that's why people get locked into an abusive situation like that. Through the beatings. Why did she stay? You know, all of this stuff. She was physically, sexually, emotionally, psychologically abused, basically made into a sex slave, transported all over the place, which is the RICO stuff that, you know, he's got to kind of defend. But the beauty of what she talked about was the fact that I was looking up about what Cassie said. She said she had to get clarity. And in order for her to get clarity, she went to therapy. She was able to sit down with somebody. And I don't want to let everybody know here. There's been many times where people feel ashamed because they didn't have a father. And I don't want to shame anybody because they didn't grow up with a certain type of structure in their life. Your life is not over. Just because you grew up with less than ideal in your background, I want to tell you that therapy helps. You're not doomed.
Yes.
Now, the gold standard is to have a loving father and a loving mother who love each other in a loving home. That's the gold standard. But if you come from toxic background, therapy will help you see things clearly, so that you don't get yourself stuck into this situation. That's the entire reason why this is my profession.
Yes.
You are not, your background doesn't determine who and what you're going to end up being.
Right.
Anything, all of us are living examples of that.
Yes.
All of us. Dr. Boyce is a living example of that. Tomiko, I don't know your story, but I'm sure you're a living example of that. We Black people in America.
Yes.
that we have comes from healing. And today is a healing conversation.
Yes.
That's the goal of why I'm taking out time right now doing this.
Yes.
Well, Tomiko, why don't you tell us what you think?
Okay, so on that note, I really really believe I agree with Dr. Alicia that you do not have to stay where you came from. You can't change because you have to remember we were small. We were children, and so whoever raised us, parents, grandparents, whatever it is, we did thus and so. We didn't have a chance until we became adults. So although you have some product of your past, it doesn't mean you have to stay stuck in your past. There
Yes.
can still be a brighter future for you. It's all how you visualize yourself first. How are you going to show up for yourself? What are you
Yes.
telling yourself? Like that's the point. Like one of my videos, I believe it was the Black History video, and I discussed where my background came from, where I grew up on food stamps and public assistance. And, that was my parents and my grandparents. I couldn't change that. I was small. But as I grew older, I always said, Tomiko, you going to do better. You have to talk to yourself. You have to visualize. You have to have a vision. If you do not have a vision, it's going to say all things fall apart. Forget it. You understand? And so that's how you show up for yourself. How are you going to show up for yourself? Because sometimes it's that past that help you. It was the times where I was embarrassed to even to take a book of food stamps to the store that said, you know what? I don't want to live that way. I waited till people went out of the store before I pulled out that book of food stamps because I didn't want nobody to know that I grew up on public assistance. So I knew that I wanted better for myself. So I had to talk to myself like things will not always remain the same. And that's what good or bad. The things about seasons is that seasons change and your season can change. It's all begin how you show up for yourself.
Yeah, and I think it's so brave of her at 8 months pregnant to get on that stand. She didn't want to get on there. She got subpoenaed, by the way, to get up there and to go through step by step what happened to her. To relive, she had to relive all of that with the public scrutiny.
Yeah.
It's amazing. It's amazing to be a survivor.
That's
and to talk about that, I mean, it's embarrassing. It's just terrible. As a mother, she's a mother now. So yes, thank you, Tomiko.
That's the start of it. When you can talk about it, that's the start of it. Because what you speak is powerful. Your words you bring to life. When you speak it, when you blow, when you put air to it, and you bring it to life. So her talking about it can be a start of a great change.
And I think instead of judging her, and we need to try to understand humans.
Yes.
Instead of judging. And abusers, they need treatment too.
Yes.
They need a treatment too. And so I think that we need to get away from judging, particularly somebody who went through something absolutely horrendous. We can't even imagine what that was like to go through that.
You know what I'll say too for sure is I think that it's one of the things I'm going to speak as the only man on the panel, not as a defender of Diddy. I've never wanted to do that. I have to keep saying that because first thing you do is you get accused of defending Diddy if you speak from a perspective that is not sound a certain way. What's really interesting to me is I do experiments in my head and I say, what if this was a man? What if this was one of the millions of men I've seen who drank themselves to an early grave because they got left by their wives for no reason of their own, meaning they didn't abuse anybody or beat anybody up. She just left because she just felt like he didn't love her enough or he wasn't good enough or whatever. She was just unhappy. And so now he's had his children. He's been taken out of the home of his children. He's lost half of his wealth. He feels financially raped and abused. He feels that he's been harmed in a horrible way. I don't see a lot of the same ability to empathize with what those men feel and what they're going through, or the same vilification
Right.
that occurs when men are abused by women. Men, I think that again, because I'm looking at the Cassie Diddy case, not because I don't know these two people. I really don't. I'm looking. I can only see the bigger picture. I can only see society, and what I do see is a society where if Cassie was a man, and let's say Cassie had done a bunch of freak offs with a woman, and the woman, let's say the woman was a hip hop mogul who said, if you leave, then I'm going to tell your mama about all the things that you did or whatever. I really just don't know if society would have reacted the same way. Because I can tell you, like, for example, I saw this crazy video where this lady got upset because a man cheated and she ran him over with a car. And half the comments from the women were like, well, what did he do? Right? He must have done something wrong. And and so again, I think that when you go beyond the Diddy Cassie case, because I think that's pretty clear cut. I told you I ain't never liked this guy. I would never want anybody to accuse me of trying to defend this man.
Right.
I really just kind of feel that sometimes the gender bias pops up in the sense that I've known men who've been victimized by women. Women don't typically abuse with their fists. Women abuse with their minds and their emotions. The emotional.
Oh, in the pocketbook, women tend to abuse men by stealing their money and taking their money, and it's just awful. Abuse. We're talking about Cassie right now, but
but listen, like, or just beating them down emotionally. Like a lot of the men that you like, there, for example, there are people who could not hear a word of what Kevin Samuels had to say because he said it in the wrong way. And I think Kevin was wrong in many cases because he forgot that men can die alone too. I believe Kevin died alone, right? And he was nasty. But what people failed to do was take the time to say, why are so many men hurting? What happened to there? A lot of them are hurting from abuse they might have gotten from their mother, who claimed to love them, but emotionally abused them by making them feel some kind of way. Maybe, I don't know, whatever it might be. Emotionally abused by women that they chose. Meaning that maybe they were not respected properly, they were not treated well, or they were, or they were left for no reason, abandoned for no reason, right? So my point is to just say that generally, I think that when we look at most abuse cases and we look at the woman as the hero and the man as the perpetrator, and that's kind of the snap judgment I think a lot of society makes. I don't know if that's always the right case because I think we're denying the agency that women have in the choices that they make. And also, I think that if you want to talk about specifically the Diddy Cassie case, I think it's okay to ask some questions and to say, well, a million other girls, not a million, there's probably 1,000 other girls that he offered that same situation to who just said, get out of my face. I'm not doing all that.
Well, I just talked about the origins of abuse that primes people. I just went through that whole thing. Right.
So is it possible? Yeah. Is it possible? And babe, you can answer this. I'm gonna be quiet.
I just explained. I mean, I already talked about it.
I hear you. But is it possible? Is it possible that someone could have a stern conversation with Cassie to say, this is what happens when the devil will wave the bag in your face, and if you go chasing that bag, the devil's gonna have something for you that you may not have signed up for. Is that okay to say, or do we just say, no, you're the victim, you go sit down and just get victimized again because what you
she doesn't get victimized again. Here's the thing. The thing is, I just talked about therapy. I just talked about what primes people, the attachment disruption. I just talked about even perpetrators of abuse. They are also victims too. So I'm not just talking about that excuse. So we covered that. So if anybody's listening and you want to know the answer to that, rewind. And I got the answer to that. But there's 3 things I want to say because I got to go. Number one, I really do feel like men need everybody. Remember, the purpose of this channel, what I'm doing today, is to talk about how human beings need to be understood and not blamed. Okay, so men need empathy, absolutely. Even men who are perpetrators of abuse, they also need empathy. Now, they also need to pay for what they've done. Okay, they all need to pay for what they've done, but they need to receive empathy for what they've done. We need to stop stigmatizing because so many men, not even psychological abuse, boys, there's so many men who are physically abused by women, and they are so embarrassed and stigmatized by it, they don't even report it. They don't even protect themselves like they need to. So nobody is deserving of abuse, not even men. So, including men, right? And so I think that we all need some healing here. And with that, I need to wrap it up. Do you want to wrap it up? Because I gotta go.
Well, why don't we let I'll finish up with Tomiko because I feel like she has a lot to say. So I'm gonna let her. How about you? You can go ahead and bounce out, babe, and I'm gonna let Miss
Okay.
Moore.
All right, y'all too. Bye, everybody.
Okay,
All right,
bye.
love you. So Miss Moore, go ahead, man. What are your thoughts?
Come on. So basically, to join in, I believe, you're right. Some men they do get abused, but they don't report it and they don't talk. See, men are doers. From what I learned, okay, they do it. They're tasks or they're task oriented. They're not going to sit like a woman and say, I feel this way, or I've been abused and things like that. Now, I became aware of a man that was, in an abusive relationship, and I encouraged him. I said, "Hey, well, do you want to report it?" And they say, "No, because I'm a man. Because it's an image that I have to uphold, and so I'm not going to deflate my image to report. I'm just going to take it like a man." Or I'm going to push away, or I'm just going to start a new relationship. So that's how that went. But it didn't go reported. And then I agree with Dr. Alicia. Some women, they also use the police involvement. They know all of a sudden that the police is going to take the woman's side. Where it comes to abusive relationship in men. So they automatically know so I'll call the cops on you. And that's what some women do. Like go ahead and try it because I'm going to call the cops on you and the cops are going to believe me over you. And so they say, okay, well, I'm just leaving the house because I don't feel like dealing with the cops. And so there's different things that role play into men, being abused, but they don't report it. And so that's this. So you got to deal with the issues of the authority and who's the authority really going to believe. And like you said, society sometimes is biased because it's really been more women that being abused, but there are men that get abused, but they don't want to report it because, like I said, the women, if they say, "Hey, well, go ahead, I'm going to call the cops," automatically the cops is going to take the woman's side. And although that wasn't it. So there's different things that role play. But what Dr. Alicia said, there should be a conversation held. And that's what relationship building, is. We build relationship. But when you don't want to be honest, then I really don't know how to approach you because you want to continue just to hold it all inside. So how can we really move forward? Because abuse is a language. When I can't really talk about it, then I have to act it out physically.
Wow, that's very interesting. I mean, I think I'll tell you, Miss Moore, it's I think with the Diddy Cassie case, I'm not I'm not interested in trying to say I know anything about these people's lives.
Right.
I just think it's another thing I think that ends up triggering me about stuff like this is I remember seeing just so many crazy situations that would happen in college campuses, where two students would agree to get drunk.
Right.
And literally one person would consent to have sex with the other one, but then say, well, it was rape because I was drunk and I can't consent. But my logic would say, well, but you were both drunk.
Right.
And then the father in me would say, well, y'all 19, why y'all in there drunk anyway?
Right.
Like why are we even creating a situation where sober people, everybody, all of us who went to bed at 10:30 at night that night have to sort through, who the victim, who the perpetrator was. It almost ends up, it's almost like when one drug dealer shoots another drug dealer, like y'all shouldn't be dealing drugs, like what
exactly.
the hell,
Right.
yeah, like
right.
not all this foolishness, so I kind of think it's so I tend to sort of look at the environments, like when I just think about that world of of chasing money, chasing rappers, free golf, drugs,
Right.
alcohol, affecting decision making, right? You can't tell me that most of the crimes that happened in this relationship did not happen when somebody was under the influence of something, right?
Exactly.
And it just creates this chaotic mess. So I think that there's a bigger lesson that God has for us underneath all of
Yes.
that. That's
Yes.
deeper than just, don't go try to date Diddy. I think
Right.
the bigger lessons are, number one, Diddy ain't the only one doing this type of stuff.
Exactly.
There's a whole Hollywood hip hop culture around that. They're just isolating this to say, yeah, he's the bad guy. All of us are good. We're all good, but he's the bad one. No, y'all all bad.
Right. That's it.
Right. And then this thing in terms of what drugs have done to the Black community and Black relationships. I don't understand why we still allow people to market drugs to our children through the music. They market it through the music. The rappers will rap about being high and everything else, and these young kids will hear this, and they end up chasing this crazy lifestyle that's going to put them in terrible situations. And I think that until we decide that we're going to get the bigger lesson, it's almost like how the Jews realize, like, as long as we're fighting, Hitler going to come try to kill all of us, right? They realized that they had to come up with a bigger lesson to learn, other than just the small-minded lesson. Until Black people learn the bigger lessons, we're going to always have these situations. There'll be another Diddy Cassie situation that's going to happen 5 years from now, and we'll be debating that too. Who did what, and all this other stuff. It's all like that movie Groundhog Day.
Yes.
Where in our community, the same tragedies repeat over and over and over again.
That's it.
Because we're not looking at the bigger lesson God gave us. Y'all should have learned to say no to drugs back before Whitney Houston died.
Long time ago.
Right?
Long time. There was a commercial. This is your brain on drugs.
Right.
Crying. It was like, this is it. Like, this is it. This is it. So
and I think that also, because so I'm really just thinking about it, like, if you think about our children, the children are the future, and I'm talking to my son and my daughter about Diddy and Cassie.
Right.
The messages I give to each of them, I think, will be slightly different, right? For my son, I say, son, don't be like Diddy. Right? The singing, dancing, drug addicted Negro who harms women.
Okay.
Right. And I would say, treat women well in your relationships. Then I would turn to my daughter and I would say, don't choose men like this to have relationships with. And also I would probably say, don't go chasing the bag, because there's a lot of horrible men holding the bag, and they have a game. They use that bag because they know it's going to pull in women who are not thinking on a higher spiritual level. If you're just chasing it, because believe me, there's so many women I know. My wife's in that category. My wife, she'll never agree with me about this, but she was the most beautiful woman I saw on that Indiana University campus. I was there 2 years. I did not see a prettier girl on that campus.
Right.
And so she would get hit on by these professional athletes, drug dealers with a whole lot of money. She told me a story about a guy who was going to pay her rent if he would just let her keep a suitcase in her closet, right? and, like, just crazy stuff that happened. Yeah. And she had the good sense to say, no, thank you. She passed the NBA players, the NFL players. She passed up the dope dealers. She wanted to date the smart guy. And I think why don't we teach our girls to pursue the smart guy, pursue the guy that's going to give you a peaceful life. Also learn how to get your own bag. I like that from Honey, right? That way you don't have to go chasing bags. Your bag is already in your closet and you can focus on something else. I'll let you get the last word, ma'am, please.
Okay. I do agree, Dr. Boyce, but realistically, what I think that we should have the conversations that we do have with our children, right? But sometimes realistically, they're always not going to follow our direction. They're just not. They're just not. It's like I want to test the waters for myself, because sometimes walking the straight and narrow is just so boring, for certain people. And it's like, no, I got to get into this because I want to see it. What attracts the eye? What's going to draw me? So although you have, provided direction, it's like, okay, I hear it, but I also want to test the waters, and not even knowing the consequences of testing the waters. You understand? But what I will say, don't stop talking. You understand? Because you never want, and that's to all the audience, you never want your loved one to say, you never told me that. even if they don't follow your direction at that point, the words were already embedded in them. You understand? They will still hear what you have to say. It will bring into remembrance. It will happen. They may not tell you, oh, I remember when you told me years ago. I'm just getting it now. I'm just getting it now. So we can direct our children, we can direct our loved ones, but they are going to make their own decisions, and it might be left. And sometimes when we do turn left and we sometimes get hurt, while turning left, sometimes they all work together in our development. You understand? It all works together. Yes, I was bruised here, but I got out. You understand? And it took that bruising that I had to go through to develop me. So sometimes the storm must come in order for me to reach a certain level of development. So although I heard your direction, but I still have to get bruised here in order for all things work together. So although I did hear your direction, but I made my own choice and I had to get bruised here, with your direction and the bruise, I began to reach another level of development and awareness. And sometimes it just has to happen like that. So don't ever stop talking. Sometimes we feel like that our words are falling on deaf ears. Like, I told this one, but he's still turning left. I told this one, but she's still doing what she want to do. Sometimes, I'm sorry, the streets have to be our learning lesson. But don't stop. Don't stop talking. Don't stop. We never want to hear our loved ones say, you didn't tell me that. Give me the knowledge. Even though I might not follow it then and there, it might work later for my good. All things work together, the good and the bad.
I do agree with you for sure. I think that what is unfortunate too is our young people are exposed to such a harmful, deadly culture
early.
that sometimes the universe ain't gonna give you but one shot.
That's right.
You decide, okay, I want to be like my favorite rapper, and you got a son that says, I'm gonna go out in the streets and shoot somebody.
Yes.
Well, he might learn his lesson after he gets an 80-year prison sentence. And at that point, it don't matter. He could be the wisest man in the penitentiary,
yes,
and mentoring all the young guys coming to jail, but he ain't never going to get a chance to redeem himself, right? And so I think that I think we have to just, I think sometimes there's some areas where you can fall and hit your head and recover, but there's some areas where you fall and you hit your head and you'll die. And I think that right, because you think about it, you imagine being in that space with the freak offs and the sex workers and the drugs. So you come out of that, you're a drug addict, you got a million STDs, probably HIV. And so now it's like, okay, now I'm wiser and I know, but at what price, right?
Exactly.
I think that there's like a tuition we pay in the University of Life, and sometimes that student loan will never be repaid, right? Meaning that sometimes you'll get something that you can't get back. Right. You'll end up in a situation that you can never fix. Someone will take away something from you that you can never recoup. Right. And so I would say, this is why I think it's important for us as a community to also confront this culture and to just say, like, we got to stop dropping our kids in the toilet and then making them dust themselves off, because there's a lot of kids out here who never have to go to a freak off to learn life lessons, or they never have to go to prison to figure out who they are. Because their community is guiding them to, become tech entrepreneurs, or guiding them to become, attorneys and things like that. And I think that's the thing that makes me very sad about it. Anyway, that's my 2 cents on it. And I want to say thank you.
Thank you so much.
Where can people follow you? Do you have a Instagram or something?
I do have Instagram. Is Tomiko, TOMIKOM, and the number 12. So it's Tomiko M at 12. Dr. Alicia, she did mention my book. This talks about relationship. This is the anti-woman. This is the controversies of a woman. against what they had, controversies against themselves or controversies against men and the broader society. And then at the end, how we all can try to join together to become a better us and to become a better society. And we unite. We need each other. Okay.
Yes.
That we need. If we can get over, I don't need anybody, I'm good by myself. Sometimes that is not true. Men need women and women need men. We
Yes.
need each other.
Yes, absolutely, 100%. Yeah, I would never, ever, ever try to convince our girls that they don't need their mother.
Yeah.
So when I see people say that about fathers, it breaks my heart because
Yeah.
you may not need that man, but your kids do. And
Exactly. And your kids suffer. They suffer at the end. Then they want to get body piercings. Then they want to get tattoos. That's to numb the pain because
mhm.
my father is not around. And although you may not want my father around, but I still need to build a relationship with my father, although you're not together. Let's try to separate the two. If y'all didn't get along, okay, try to resolve that. But I still want that relationship with the other parent. It took two to make me. I want both. I want a balance of both.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and it's funny to Tomiko. Tomiko, did I say that
Yep.
right?
Tamiko,
Yeah,
yep.
yeah. It's funny, Tomiko, because um, I attribute a lot of that to I guess chasing the highs of dopamine to maybe
Yes.
heal the pain that we never fixed, right?
Mhm.
Not heal, but to numb the pain, right? Not
Right.
heal it. And so you're chasing the dopamine of sex
Yeah.
through these different relationships, but
Mhm.
you haven't acquired the discipline to take responsibility for the choices you made.
Exactly.
You chose that woman. Now
Right.
raise that baby you made. You chose that man. Now
Right.
raise that baby you made. And I just I'm really saddened when I see how many examples there are of people that will get together and make a baby and
Right.
then break up even before the baby's born
Right.
because there's no sort of standard in terms of saying, okay, I have to acknowledge my responsibility, not just to have this baby that loves me, but like if you're talking about a mother, sometimes I think mothers might feel that, well, my baby loves me and I feed my kids and I do right by my kids, that's good. But there's a responsibility to a situation you created as well. I think same thing is true with
Exactly.
men,
Exactly.
and I know that this is not popular. A lot of people don't talk this way, but in my thought of it is I hear a lot of people say me, I, my
Mhm.
happiness, I want this is what I want. I have to take care of myself, self, me, I, self. It
Right.
sounds like a broken record to me.
Right.
And I don't hear a lot of people talking about we and us. And
Exactly.
and, and it's almost become what is it the word? It's almost become sacrilegious to
Right.
even try to suggest that perhaps the group matters more than yourself. Again,
Mhm.
I know that's controversial. I'm not asking anybody to
Mhm.
agree with me, but
Right.
that's exactly how I think. Because believe me, don't tell Alicia, but if all I
Mhm.
did was think about myself,
Mhm.
there's a whole lot of other things I could be out here doing than
Right.
just, I mean, I literally like I love her kids like they're my own. I don't have to take
Right.
care of those kids.
Right.
The world would forgive me if I said, well, those ain't my kids anyway. Forget the
Right.
little Negroes. I'm gonna go party. I'm gonna go to a
Right.
Diddy party. And but the way I was raised, it's like, no, you're a black man
Right.
with black children. You
Right.
have a responsibility to the black community,
Yes.
and it ain't just about you having pleasure and joy every single second of the day.
Right.
And honestly, I'm kind of weirded out over how
Mhm.
people hear that and they think that's weird. But if I
Right.
go to other communities, I go to Asian communities, Jewish communities, other communities,
Mhm.
they completely understand that uh
Mhm.
that idea of some degree of self-sacrifice, not to the point where you can never be happy, but to the point where you just are
Right.
committed to something bigger than you, right? And so I don't know.
Mhm.
I would encourage
Mhm.
everybody to think outside the box on that and follow your spirit as opposed to just following like
Yes.
what you hear on the internet. You hear a lot of selfishness on the internet. I ain't putting up with no man who does
Yes.
this. I ain't dealing with these women because these women want this and want that. No, I have
Right.
patience with women. I know women are different from men. I had just like I had patience with my mother, my grandmother, my sister, my daughters, etc.
Mhm.
Women confuse the hell out of me sometimes. Sometimes y'all just make me mad. I don't get it. But I have patience because I know your value and I know your worth and I want you around me and I want you to want to be
Right.
around me. I want to add value. And
Right.
and a selfish person, I don't think can see any of that.
Right.
So
Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah. Yeah. I get it. I get it. And sometimes then we go sometimes to learn, one have to be willing to listen. And some is not willing to listen, especially, and it's no throw off to any population, but
mm,
sometimes, especially the adolescents, the teenagers, there are 16-year-old mothers. I'm not throw I'm not, it is, it happened, whatever. But sometimes when you feel like, hey, I don't want to listen, then things happen like that, and then you end up in this relation, and then you pregnant, and then the father goes off, and then the same person that you didn't want to listen to and you said you got it, now you're dependent on because the father left.
mm-hmm,
And so
mm-hmm,
sometimes you just have to be willing to open to listen, because there are experiences that the older person or whoever that was trying to talk to you had already lived. It's nothing like a lived experience, and they trying to share it with you. But because you feeling yourself, they said they say, and you say, listen, I don't want to hear it. But then you turn right back around, and then you need help for the person that you don't want to hear, because the father no longer is with you, and now you're a single young mother. And so this is the conversation that we try to prevent. So it's
mm,
nothing wrong. Please just give a listening ear. Just give a listening ear. But again,
mm.
thank you so much, Dr.
Yeah,
Boyd.
thank you. Yeah, you starting to hold up the great
Oh,
conversation.
I'm done.
I no, I like
I'm
what you're saying. I
done.
don't. I mean, everybody. It's really weird to me how many people get offended when you say, "Just shut up and listen." Sometimes
Yes.
stop talking so much. Stop acting like you know everything. You don't know
Yes.
everything.
Yes.
I had more education, Tomiko, by the age of 25 than
Mhm.
most people will have their whole entire life.
Yeah.
And the number one thing I do is I will listen.
Right.
Because the first thing I learned when I got my doctorate and all those other letters behind my name is
Okay.
how little I actually know.
Thank you. Me
You know,
too.
yeah, I done studied books and I have a lot of life experience and I have something to offer eventually. But the first thing I need to do is shut up and
Yes.
listen and
Yes.
understand. And it's so weird to me
Mhm.
so many people are just like, I don't want to hear nothing. Da, da, da.
Yeah. Yeah.
People like that never get ahead.
No, I agree. I just feel like I need to say this since I done I done mentioned the teenagers, adolescents, the teenagers. This is just strictly for you. You don't have to be alone. If you are feeling like you alone, you are not alone. We are here, meaning adults. There are even agencies to support you. There are adults, but we need you to be willing. We need you to be willing. Okay, we do love you. We was adolescents ourselves, and sometimes being an adolescent is hard because you just trying to feel your way through society, and you don't even know, and you feel all this corruption in you by yourself, and poor, and why is it like that? It don't always have to be like that. I'm the person. I grew up on the same thing. I grew up on Medicaid. I grew up on public assistance. It don't have to always be like that. Okay, so you don't always have to use substances to numb the pain. But please just be willing to listen and to talk. But we do love you. We do love you. So don't ever feel like it's only you and you alone, because it is not. I'm done.
All right, that's a great message, and I agree 100%. And I want to say thank you
Thank you.
to Miss Tomiko Moore.
Thank you.
And Tomiko is the author of the book. What is it? Anti-Woman?
Anti-woman. It's a lot.
Anti-Woman. And so thank you, Miss Tomiko. I appreciate you blessing us with your time.
Thank
And
you.
everybody, have a great night. And don't forget, tomorrow morning we're going to meet for class. If you are not already in our morning economic elevation training, we do this 7 days a week, 10 a.m. For anybody that wants money in their pocket, anybody that wants to get ahead financially, you can just text the word morning to the phone number 87948, and I will send you an invitation myself to invite us or invite you to join us in the morning. So God bless you. Have a great day, everybody, and thank you again, Tomiko. It's great to see you,
Thank
and
you.
y'all have a good night,
All right.
everybody. All right, bye
Take care.
bye.
Good night.
You
Okay,
too. Bye
bye.
bye.